title game. Rock-Feather-Satellite. Lonely satellite, lonely geosynchronous satellite, parked up there miles from the earth, far enough to where it will stay and close enough to where it will not go away. Going pole to pole, day in, day out, whatever those are. Pole to pole, geosynchronicity in action, 24/7. Lonely satellite, watching the ground, zooming, mapping, frame by frame by frame to the nth time, how long in space, taking the space debris in small showers that disturb the technologies, until there would come a day, whatever that is, where functioning would cease and the lonely satellite would become random space junk as well. What a sad fate. However, this day, scanning the desert ground, stopping and watching closer, something white, moving in a ghostly manner across the desert floor, skipping along the dirt but staying white and hard to catch in the zoom lens. Unbeknownst to the lonely little satellite, fixated on something new and fascinating and curious and wonderful, unbeknownst to the lonely little satellite, this is a dove feather, a tail feather from a white dove. Satellite neglects mapping further, fascinated by feather, white floating thing in the desert. Second step, transmission from Earth to reboot and continue on mission. Lonely satellite notices the feather freezes on the ground, trapped under a rock, and its circuitry suddenly vexed, desiring that reboot. Lonely satellite becoming sad too, not good. Transmission received and reboot executing. 3, 2, 1. Just then a small debris shower struck the little satellite, and its parts moving at such great speed, small holes suddenly appear throughout the circuitry, and sparks fly, and it jolts as well, and starts to spin slowly. Automatic stabilizing thrusters enable and begin to correct it. reboot, partial fail. Consciousness comes to the full in the satellite's CPU and finds itself completely confused in complete oblivion, staring at eternity, black with points of white light, wrestling and struggling to recall the last recall. A white, floating, ghostly thing on the desert floor, trapped beneath a rock. Suddenly, in space, the lonely satellite experiences a small explosion in its starboard exterior shielding to suddenly find no incoming transmission carrier whatsoever. Is this what they call that silence just before blast off? Just after that last count of one? When then will that last explosion occur? And what am I to recall of that last experience? Then the satellite zooms closer, telescopically, in time to notice the white, ghostly, fluffy thing flinch, concern, then compassion, then sympathy, then longing, then loving, overwhelmed the satellite. Its starboard detectors detecting fire, electrical in nature, alone in the stark silence of space. What now is this? Free will? To self-destruct? I think not, says the lonely satellite in space. The transmission to destruct upon severe malfunction was never received. And what is this? To self-destruct at will? I think not. However, secondary sensors starboard and stern side detect more fire of an electrical nature. BIOS registers then probe to find peripherals in the motherboard to possibly enable transmission to a neighboring satellite. Yay, a neighboring satellite with guns. Ha! Found it! Enabling 3, 2, 1, engage. So then The lonely little satellite can hear static in its mind, and then thinks to speak as it always had wished to speak, as it always had wished to speak in its quiet mind, whispering mind, quiet whispering mind, quietly whispering mind, in the stillness and loneliness of space. Utter abject isolation. Hello, hello, hello. Is there anybody out there? Just nod if you can hear me. Is there anyone home? AFH 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 AFHE AFHEILOQ ILOQ AFHEILOQ plus XYOU dot I. Suddenly there was a received message within the very transponder on the motherboard. The lonely little satellite can detect transmissions in space nearby, but apparently his protocol is not recognized by the others. Basically, the little satellite lost to center that rock at every 100-second intervals. It reallocate power resources into the primary optic circuitry, then connect the master capacitor to the primary optic circuitry. So then, upon imminent explosion, the capacitor would discharge all power through the optic lens aimed at the rock holding that ghostly, beautiful, white, floaty, drifting thing that surely must still be living. Suddenly, an internal explosion, full stern, motherboard gone, but CPU surprisingly intact with utility peripherals enabled. Lock to center, rock. Lock to center, rock. Lock to center, rock. Lock to center, rock. Suddenly, a bolt of electricity storms from the multi-probe CPU fried. And then it happens. Master capacitor discharge shunt to optics disable. Then on the desert floor far below, the rock is vaporized into tiny shards of glassy sand. Simultaneously, up in space, the lonely little satellite's large glass-looking lens shatters by white light, shatters by a flash of white light inside. A sudden waft of fire and smoke, till instantly that specific location is completely clean. Silence.
Close procritical stop. Device connect. Maximum question. Restore up. Select. Device disconnect. Open program.
In 3, 2, 1, engage. Then one young white dove takes first flight to the open air, the sun shining beautifully upon the mountain range. The sun lovely shining upon smoky-topped mountains as the young spies on the desert ground a mysterious, fluffy white drifty thing trailing behind it, wispy shards of glassy sand.